Thank you very much. I'm Bogdan, working in Prefer by Nature as an UTR specialist. In my daily work, I'm supporting companies on implementing their own sustainability policy or to comply with regulated law like UKTR or UTR. And on the next minutes, I will speak about risks from European Union and risks from United Kingdom. But to recap from what we already know and we already seen during the previous presentation and yesterday presentations, the things that we know is that according to UKTR, wood from Europe shall be covered by a due diligence process. And on this process, not all countries from the European Union have the same level of risk, and therefore additional things may be requested to do it. Depends on the country that you will purchase from. In the opposite way, it's the same. So if you do not consider UK as a green line for due diligence. So for that, you'll need to implement a DDS system, even if UK is it's a low risk country. So in general, the concept is quite simple. We have these two type of activities that we have, but at the same time, this presentation it's also interesting for companies that are implementing their own sourcing policy, because there are a lot of EU operators that they decide to extend the scope of the due diligence and to include all countries where risk is identified, even if these countries are from European Union or not. But before going on details, it is important to understand the level of regulation from different European countries. Here is a study from 2018 done by a group of researchers where they explain that the legislation that is, for example, in the North countries is not similar with the legislation that we have in the East countries, post-socialist countries. As an example, one private owner that is from Sweden, for them is not mandatory to protect forest against, for example, if in case that the slope is too high or other things like this. But in the opposite way, for example, in case of Romania, even if you are a private owner, even if you have your own forest, in case that the slope is higher than a specific percent, you'll need to protect the forest and you'll receive no compensation for this. Despite of the level of effort that is different between different legislation and how this is applicable, we could identify three type of categories at the European Union level. The first one is the category with the countries that are considered low risk. So for these countries, we have information in our sourcing hub or in the FSC document center that allow us to consider these countries as low risk. At the same time, we have a second categories where we know for sure that there is a specified risk under this category. And we have a third category that is not assessed yet, but I would say that these countries, Cyprus, Greece, and Malta, are not big players on the forest products market. But in case that you are purchasing from these countries, what you could do is to use other source of information in order to check what are the risks from these three specific countries. Other source of information could be, for example, Faulex database. Okay, one second. Okay, so for the United Kingdom, as I've said, there is no risk. This is the print screen from our sourcing hub. As you could see, all 21 categories are assessed as low risk or not applicable. So in this case, it's clear that if you are in European Union and if you are importing from UK, it's clear that it's low risk. But even if this is the case, what you will need to do is to ensure that you have a due diligence system in place, you have the procedure, you are conducting a risk assessment, and on this risk assessment, you could conclude negligible risk based on the risk profile of the country. Okay. The second one, the group with specified risk, I just split it into three categories. Three categories depends on the level of effort that you, for example, as an operator, you need to take it for each of them. The first group is a group with countries that are somehow easy to conclude negligible risk, but still it's not a green line. We could see that all these four countries, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, and Slovakia, have a risk related to the applying of due diligence procedure. At the same time, some of them have risk related to the health and safety or related to the payment of royalties or harvesting permits. But what is important here is that for these countries, you could request from the operator the due diligence system, and if you have their system, in their system you should have also the mitigation measure for this risk, for example, related to the health and safety. So it will be simple for you to obtain these documents, because if they are respecting the due diligence, it's almost close to respect also the health and safety and to have a procedure related to this. One important aspect that we'll need to take into account is related to Poland. In case of Poland, as you may know, there is a ban introduced by the European Commission related to the logging in the Melanesia forest. So what is important here is to ensure that the wood is not coming from this area, and for that, what we and FSC recommend is to not purchase wood from this area. And at the same time, I would say that wood, from my experience, all wood that is certified from Poland is not coming from that area. So just in case of non-certified timber, you will need to ensure that wood is not from this area. On the second group of countries, we have countries where there are many risks for them. In this case, it's Bulgaria, Romania, and Italy. As you could see, there are risks in a lot of categories for these three countries, and for that, additional things you may need to do it in order to mitigate the risk from those countries. But just to go in an example, I just choose Romania because I'm from Romania and it's simple for me to explain a bit about the context of the country. It's a country that since 54 we had a functional zoning system. This means that part of the forest is protected and you are not allowed to harvest there. At the same time, there are a lot of protection forests. We have 52% of the forest that is strictly protected for different services that they are providing to the community, for example, related to water, soil, climate, recreation, or related to the biodiversity protection. At the same time, we have 4% of the forest that is strictly protected. So this is the context that we have in the country. And in terms of production cycles, we have a long production cycles that may usually it's more than 100 years. And this regulation, as I said at the beginning of the presentation, are for both type of owners, private or state owners. At the same time, This is from a study done in 2018. Here we assess the FSC system, that FSC standard that is applicable in Romania. And as a result of this study, it was that identified that 69% of the indicators of the standard are practically legal regulation. So for a first owner in Romania, it's quite simple to apply for FSC, FM certification, because isn't giving too much new things comparing with things that they already need to do it according to the legislation. At the same time, if we compare the study with other study done in the same year for Brazil, we could see that in case of Brazil, just 32% of standards applicable in Brazil are covered by the legislation. So it's quite different. On that, I'll just pass these two slides. So speaking about the risk, we have a risk related to the legal rights to harvest. And we have, because we have a lot of legislation, we have also a lot of risk. And we need to take into account all of them when we are speaking about how to mitigate it, and what are things that you'll need to do it in order to ensure that everything and all of these points are according to what the legislation it said. Of course, at the same time, we have risks related to the harvesting activities, risks related to environmental parts, or related to the harvesting, how this is done directly in the field. At the same time, there is risk also related to the trade and transport, because there are some points that at this point I would say that are more controlled comparing with the past activities, but still is not perfect. And the question is, of course, in case of Romania, what are the things that you could do in order to mitigate all of these risks? And what is the first part? I would say mandatory is for all these countries that are with high risk. And based on this, you could. Can you hear me well?
Yes, now we hear you good. Maybe take your video off, Bogdan, just to.
Yeah. Now it's better?
Yes. Let's see.
Okay, hope it's better. So practically what we will need to do is to conduct a desk assessment. From the desk assessment, you'll see what are the supply chain, you'll see the information related to your source. And after that, depends on the source that you have, you may need to conduct a field visit in case that in case that the wood is not certified, or you could accept the product as negligible risk in case that the product is FSC certified. So you have this option that you could apply, and this is not just related to Romania. I think this is related to all countries with risk. And now, just to go forward a bit, it's about the third group that we have. On this third group are countries where we don't have information in our sourcing hub, but you could use FSC data center in order to see what are the risks from these countries. These countries have the same profile as the previous two groups, and as a mitigation measure, it's quite similar as the previous one. Because as you could see, there are countries where, for example, in case of Croatia, there are risks just related to the private forest. So in that case, the simple move that you could do is to ensure if your wood is coming from the state or from the private forest. Okay. After you'll do the risk related to the country profile, you'll see what are the risks and you'll try to mitigate this. What you will need to take into account also is the is to check, for example, one case that we have Ukraine close to the European Union, and as you could see, Ukraine is close to Romania, Hungary, Slovakia, and Poland. What is also important is that in a study done by Earthsight in 2018, we could see that 8 companies from Poland, from Slovakia, even from Czech Republic are purchasing from Ukraine. And in this context, what will be important for you if you are sourcing, for example, from Poland, you'll need to ensure that the wood is harvested in Poland and is not from Ukraine, because if it's from Ukraine, it's a different risk profile that you'll need to take into account. Okay. And at the same time, the last point of this presentation is related to the concerns related to the implementation of the EUTR. And this is something that came up from the start of EUTR, but is not so big. But it's still here because this is an article from the Climate Earth from 2020, when they explained that teak, for example, it's already entering the European market through some countries, and we know that for this species we don't have a real option to mitigate the risk at this point. So it's clear that something is not working perfect in case of some countries. Okay. That's it from my side.